And Dad opens the door, and there's 2 police officers stood at the door. And they said, "Mr. and Mrs. Carr, may we come in?" And so they came in, sat down, and said, "I'm really sorry. We've got some really tragic bad news to tell you." And I lived on the streets, living in a tent, scrounging for food, hoping nobody I knew would see me. And then one day, a friend of mine actually seen me. And he said, "Steve, what on earth?" So I had a thought, and it was to walk the entire length of Great Britain, raising awareness for mental health and homelessness, because I was experiencing both. And it can be difficult to spot it. The signs are very subtle. If you know what you're looking for, they're not so subtle. But the good news is this.
Join the journey, stay for a while.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of KohPhanCast, the official podcast of Copenhagen Island. And this is a charged one. This week with me is Steve Carr. Steve Carr is a suicide prevention facilitator. He is a breathwork coach, a trauma coach, and all around the purpose and the meaning of this guy is to help, is to give, is to nurture, is to be a safe space for others. We talked about suicide prevention. We talked about everything and anything that is in the relationship between a person and himself. Steve shared his story, eye-opening story that I cannot wait for you to listen to. And guys, you know the drill. Like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell notifications, ding, we're having fun here. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this conversation, and let's get into it, guys. KohPhanCast. Enjoy the episode. Steve, thank you so much for being here with me. And honestly, I've been kind of running after you for the last 6 months. And I know that when something takes me a lot of time to do, it means that there's a lot of value in it. Because I've been seeing you walking around, like usually I start those with a compliment to my guests. And like, I've been seeing you running around the island for years now, doing like anything you can do to help, like there is something about the root of why someone is doing something, and then the branches that it brings out. So if you are doing like the breath work and the Shilajit business and being like a suicide prevent facilitator, and like those are all branches in my eyes to the root that is you trying to, not even trying, creating more peace, more love, more self-realizations in this world. And I really appreciate you for it, because it seems that everything you do is to help others. So I know you, but for the guys out there that does not, 30, 40 seconds, who is Steve Carr?
And thank you for inviting me here. I know it's been a while. So thank you. We eventually got here.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, my name is Steve, and I help people regulate their nervous system through a variety of different breathwork practices to help take them into a more calmer space. But I'm also a mental health, workplace wellbeing, and suicide first aid facilitator from England.
It's such a delicate subject. Like, we will get into it because I want to share some things as well, for sure. But how did you even get to the point that you're like telling yourself, I have the urge to help. I'm going to dedicate myself to giving?
It's a great question, and I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning.
Please.
So I was born in a town called Swindon, and Swindon is famous for, or known for, building all the carriages on the railways in, back in the day when Brunel was building trains. So all the carriages were built in Swindon. So it's an industrial town.
Yeah.
I was born in Swindon into a family of 5. So mum and dad, older brother Paul, and younger sister Claire. And I was born in 1976. And we lived on something called a council estate. So it's government-owned houses. Money was very, very tight. Dad was the only parent that was working. He was a car mechanic. And mum was a stay-at-home housewife. And my elder brother, Paul, was a year older than me. So I am 49, so he would be 50. And my younger sister, Claire, is younger by 1 year as well. So she's 48. And we grew up in this 3-bedroom council estate house. Now, I'll give you some kind of idea of what it was like living on the council estate. It was very troubling. There was burglaries. There were people stealing things. I remember several times my dad had this big motorbike in the garden, and many times we'd wake up in the morning and it had gone. It would be found with the right money, asking the right people. It would come back the same day, not always in the same condition that it was taken in, but you'd get it back. If it wasn't nailed down, it would be stolen. But then we get offered things as well that was stolen. So things like food, meat, clothing, everything was kind of stolen or unaccounted for, and you just didn't ask questions. So Dad went out to work as a car mechanic, and I just remember things were really tough for my parents. Mum and Dad grew up in very toxic environments. Mum grew up in a family of 13 brothers and sisters, and Dad grew up in a very Catholic household of 5 brothers and sisters. Now, sadly, with my mum's upbringing, it really scarred her. And she thought by having children, that would help cure this, I don't know, trauma that she was experiencing. So she wasn't consciously having children. She was unconscious to try and help them in their relationship. And so they had my brother, first of all, in 1975. Then I came along a year later, and then my sister. Originally, they wanted a girl. So they tried 3 times until they got the girl. Now, I really struggled because I was the middle child. So they loved my brother. He was the first. And my sister, the girl, come along. So it kind of left me, hanging in limbo in this middle child. And I swear I have middle child syndrome because I didn't get the attention that they gave my brother and sister. Anyhow, I also grew up in a very toxic, emotionally and physically abusive household. So on a daily basis, I'd either be hit physically or emotionally abused. It was one of the two on a daily basis. And by the age of 14, I'd started using illegal drugs to be able to manage and cope with the home life. And it was kind of to mask what was going on, really. And so it started with weed, marijuana, and then moved on to LSD, speed, MDMA, all by the time I was 14. And I just remember even taking it at school. We were taking LSD in school.
So mental.
It was, completely. I look back, and the way we were taking it, though, is not the way I see people taking it nowadays. So I live in a very conscious community, and some people do take it, and I get it. They're taking it for the journey, for the trip to go internally. But me, I used to take it just to get absolutely wired or to escape. So it's used for different reasons. And by the age of 14, I was using very hard drugs and associating with people that were just like me from dysfunctional families. And I just remember I was 15 years old, and it was Friday the 13th of September, 1991. And I used to share a bedroom with my brother. And I was down at the breakfast table. He followed down shortly to the breakfast table, and he asked me if I'd like to come and meet his new girlfriend that evening. And I said I'd already made plans, but, thank you very much for the offer, and went to school. It was a normal day. Came back from school, got changed, went out, and came back at about 10 o'clock that evening, just as it was getting dark. And as soon as I walked in, there was something different this time, because the radio was on, the television was on. Mum and Dad were both stood up, kind of pacing around, looking like they didn't know what to do with themselves. So I said, what's going on? And Dad said, there's been a really big accident where your brother is. And just wait here. I'm going to go there to see if I can find him. If he comes back, tell him to wait. So Dad went off. An hour later, it was just before 11 o'clock, Dad comes back and said, they've closed the road off. Paramedics, police, ambulance, fire brigade, all the emergency services are there. And I couldn't see Paul. So he thought he'd come back.
Yeah.
Within a couple of minutes of Dad being back, there was a knock at the door. So we thought, great, Paul's back. Maybe he's forgotten his keys. And Dad opens the door, and there's 2 police officers stood at the door. And they said, Mr. and Mrs. Carr, may we come in? And so they came in, sat down and said, I'm really sorry. We've got some really tragic bad news to tell you. Your son Paul has been killed in a car accident this evening by a drunk driver. He wasn't in the car. He was sat on a bench with 5 other children as young as 7. And what happened is 2 guys had finished work and they'd gone straight to the pub after work, had a couple of beers and decided to drive home. Now, on the way home, they thought it would be a great idea to race each other. So one car is doing between 80 to 90 miles an hour. The other one is chasing it. And they come towards an industrial estate with a bench opposite an industrial estate with 5 children on. The car pulls out the industrial estate. The first car seen it. The second car didn't. The second car hit the first car. The second car careered off the road and rolled over the bench and killed all 5 children, including my brother. Now, this happened at 7 o'clock and we were not told until 11. But there was a very good reason for that. Because whilst 4 of the children died at the scene, it was my brother went on to die later in hospital because he was the only one to survive that crash a further 3 hours because he died of internal bleeding. So when the paramedics arrived, they seen all the injured children and they said to my brother, it looks like you're okay on the surface. Can we go and attend to those that need it? So he said yes. And so much like me, this giving to other people, attending to other people first, it's exactly what he did. And sadly, he died much later in hospital because they couldn't actually see anything on the exterior, on the surface, that was wrong. So it wasn't, they didn't actually know until they kind of like, that he passed away. And that tore my family apart because, we didn't get any professional help. Now, when I say we didn't, Dad, in his infinite wisdom, chose not to accept professional help. Now, back in 1991, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about trauma, it wasn't widely accepted back then. It was still very much
weakness or
completely. There was still the fear of being locked up in an asylum. And my dad had his own demons, as did Mum, and he didn't want this surfaced. So my dad was a very proud man. He said, no, we'll deal with it all internally. But he couldn't deal with it internally because we'd never been shown how to express emotions, talk about feelings. And so Dad didn't know how to either. So it came out as rage. So this was just anger and rage. Every time something surfaced, it would come up as anger and rage. In my house, love was conditional. So it was either purchased or bribery. So we only kind of knew 2 emotions, and that tore the family apart. And it was less than a year, Mum and Dad got divorced. So I'm 16 at this point. And I remember having the conversation with Mum and Dad saying I had to choose a parent to go and live with. And imagine being a 16-year-old child saying that you have to choose the mother or father. Because they were arguing so much, they hated each other. And so we were forced to make a decision, but we still loved Mum and Dad. So we were kind of like forced to pick one of the other and then kind of neglect the other one and force them away. So
do you remember the thought process as a 16-year-old guy thinking about either of them? Like, how do you even pick?
It was super hard at the time, but the way my mindset was at the time, it was, okay, who am I less likely to get shit from? And I thought, well, it's probably going to be Mum. So I'd just go with Mum because I wasn't thinking rationally at that time, but also wasn't thinking long term. So it was actually, who's probably going to be better for me, Mum or Dad? So I went with Mum. But Mum equally wasn't getting help, so she turned to drink, she turned to drugs, she turned to sex. There was a lot of other men involved, and I didn't want to see this. But all she was doing was coping and managing the best that she could with just having lost her first son. So what was she doing? Everything that she could to manage the pain. And I understand that now. But at the time, I'm like, hell, you've lost your shit.
Yeah.
But now she was communicating in her way that she was in pain. And it's what a lot of people do nowadays is they communicate the way they know how that they're in pain. You might hear it being called, that person is attention seeking or a cry for help. And I hate those two words.
Mm-hmm.
They're communicating the best way they know how that they're in pain.
Yeah.
So whenever I see that or hear that, I challenge that and say, hey, it's not a cry for help, but they are asking for help the best way they know how.
Yeah.
Because we'll just ignore it if we think it's a cry for help or, attention seeking, which it's not. They want the attention. Of course they do, but they're telling us the way they know how.
Yeah. It's just, first of all, thank you for sharing this, the level of awareness that you seem to have towards your situation and towards why you feel and how you think, and your thought process is commendable and, amazing. That sometimes as we go as humans, like you say, we only know how to do things the best way we know how to do them. And of course, then it gets interpreted like different perspective, needs to observe how you do things, and that it's going through another person's thought process. And you're like this mess of trying to understand the person that is in front of you. Like, as I see it in my way, like our biggest mission is to, first of all, try to understand ourselves before we go out and try to pick up signs of people's traumatic experience and cry for help or need for help, because the level of help and the way the help looks is different between a person to a person. But the seed of wanting to be loved and needing this hug and needing someone to listen to them, it's universal. So the moment we just learn to not even try, but just accept that we all need something, and accept that we all, while need something, also have the ability to give it to others. Just instead of just looking at every individual case that you are looking at, just in every situation, just to try and to be as helpful as possible and as open and aware as possible. Because when you say, this is an attention seeker or this or that, you immediately react with defensive. You are getting defensive, your walls are up, everything is super aggressive. Like, just imagine what it would be like being the person that does not know how to express themselves and desperately is trying to help me. And a question I had for you was, like, as a 16-year-old boy, like the police officers are at your door and you get this news that you will never see your brother again. Like, what's the first thought that, how do you explain it to yourself?
It's a really good question. At the time, I didn't know how to deal or manage with that news. So for me, something bizarre happened. I didn't know how to react to it. And just quite simply because I'd never been taught how to express feelings or emotions. So it actually hit me with no emotional feeling, which was horrid. And I didn't cry. I didn't cry for 2 weeks. I was in that fight, flight, freeze, response, which was just reactive. But I didn't know which emotion to bring up because I'd never been taught to cry. It was okay to cry. I had so many people hugging me saying it's okay to cry, it's okay to let it go. And I thought that's just a weakness because I've been conditioned that way. And it wasn't until 2 weeks after my brother died that our pet dog, that we'd had him for years, the pet dog died. And that brought up everything. And that was when the tears came, the emotions came, and I completely broke down. And it didn't stop then. The tears kept coming. And every time that there was an emotional event, the memories would come up. And so I'd start crying. And it could be maybe a partner leaving me. It might have been I'd lost the job. The smallest of things set me off. And at the time, though, I was just stunned by it, completely stunned. So, as a young child, not knowing about feelings and emotions, I didn't know how to react.
And when you're going with your life and you suddenly, you start crying, you start seeing that it's not defined the fact that expressing emotions equals weakness. And slowly you're starting to probably, I guess, find your strength in those emotions. And like, can you share a little bit about the emotional path that you walked with connecting, learning, or understanding what it is to experience emotion?
Yeah, absolutely. So I continue with the story. So after Mum and Dad got divorced, I stopped speaking with Dad for many years, from the age of 16 until I was 30. And it was 2009 at this point. And I went back home, knocked Dad's door and said, Dad, can I come home and stay for a house? And he said, yeah, of course you can. You've got 1 year to do it. So I was doing quite well. I was working for Unilever in middle management. Life was good. I was a real socialite. I was going out partying. Life was amazing. But I had to stop the partying for a little while to save. So I bought my first house a year after being with Dad. And life was absolutely amazing. Had the most wonderful partner, had a great house, but everything that I purchased with this house, it was in a sought after area of Swindon. Everything that I'd purchased of that house was on hire purchase or loan, credit card.
Yeah.
So I was thousands in debt at this point, but on the exterior, I looked like I had everything.
You're rocking it.
Completely.
Yeah.
I'm working 2 jobs. So I'm working at Unilever and I'm also teaching fitness classes at David Lloyd. So on the exterior, Steve looks like he's doing well. And underneath, I'm still holding all of this trauma. Now, a lot of the drugs had stopped at this point until one night I was out with some friends. And a friend of mine said, Steve, I heard you used to do drugs. I said, yeah. And he said, well, I've got something that you might like to try. And he reached into his pocket and pulled out this little bag of white powder. And it was cocaine. And I remember he said, do you want to try a line? So I said, yeah, why not? Not going to lie, it was fucking amazing. I absolutely loved it. I felt like a king. The confidence that I had, was chatting to every woman. I loved it. Made me feel amazing. But it was very short-lived. So anyway, this would happen on a Friday night for a couple of weeks. And I'd do a line on a Friday night. And it would soon progress to a gram. And then I've really enjoyed it on the Friday, so I thought I'd do one Saturday as well. And then Saturday soon progressed to Sunday. And I thought, you know what, I've got work and I'm not feeling great. Maybe I'll just do another one Sunday night and get me through Monday. Then Monday night came, I'm coming down. I'll just do a bit more until it progressed to 1 gram a day. And then I got a real taste for it and I'm addicted at this point. And it progressed into English money, £100 a day, 3.5 grams per day.
Oh, wow.
And I remember the guy that I was buying it from was a supplier to dealers. So he had endless amounts. And he said to me, how'd you like to look after it? And I was like, great, of course. He said that he was going to pay me in cocaine. So I'm looking after £50,000-60,000 plus a week of cocaine. And I've got as much as I can handle on tap.
Oh, wow.
I stopped working. I gave up my job. I took £20,000 equity out of my house that I'd just bought because it had gained that much equity in less than a year, and spent all of it on cocaine. I stopped paying the mortgage. I stopped seeing all of my friends. All of the goods that I had in my house, it was everything brand new, top of the range. I started to sell to afford my cocaine habit. I had to give him the cocaine back. So I was getting so paranoid. I stopped seeing everyone. I didn't want family to know. I didn't want friends to know that I've got this dirty little secret. I was in my house with an eviction notice in the window because they said they were going to repossess the house. And I had nothing. It was just bare floors. I was just me and my sleeping bag. And I had nothing left in that house. I sold it all for cocaine. But it still wasn't enough for me to give up. And I got evicted. I lived on the streets. So I'm there on the streets for a short period of time.
What's your age at this point?
And I am 32 by this point. And I lived on the streets, living in a tent, scrounging for food, hoping nobody I knew would see me. And then one day a friend of mine actually seen me and he said, Steve, what on earth? And he took me in and he helped me. And so he didn't know about the cocaine habit. Nobody did. And I got back into work. And it was many years later that I'm working for Marlboro Cigarettes. And it was a Friday afternoon, and I'm still thousands of pounds in debt because I'm paying the money back that I owed on the house. I'm paying all the debt of everything that I had in the house. And all I'm doing at this point is working to pay my debt. And I'd say I'm probably about 80,000, 90,000 pounds in debt. And I wasn't living, I was just surviving to pay the bills. And I had a breakdown in work. All the unhelpful coping strategies that I was using, I came off the cocaine and was using something called methadone, cat, party drug. And I was doing equally as much. And I just remember, this is all too much. So I bought many grams of cat, a gram of high potency cocaine, a bottle of whiskey, a bottle of vodka, a gram of the legal high called Spice, and I attempted to take it all as quickly as I could, knowing full well that I wanted to end my life. The pain was far too great, and I couldn't figure a way out. And so I attempted suicide. Fortunately, I survived, but I attempted another 2 times that month, 11 years ago. And on the 3rd attempt, I then went to my doctor the next day and I said, if I survive this, I'll go to the doctor and ask for help. The hardest thing I've ever done, to say, I need help, I'm a cocaine addict, please help me or I'm going to die. I started to pray at the time as well and say, God, please, if you allow me to survive, I'll pray every day, I'll change who I am, change everything about me, because I was completely different then to who I am now. Completely apathetic. The only person that would interest me was me, all for me. And it changed my life. I went to the doctors and was given a diagnosis of complex PTSD, high functioning anxiety, work-related stress, depression, unresolved childhood trauma, and addiction, all in one go. And they said, Steve, you've got a choice. You can take this medication, go home and watch Jeremy Kyle. It was a crap TV series. Or you don't. So that was the choice. And I said, I don't want to put anything else in my body that's going to kill it. I said, I'm done with all intoxication, whether it be legal, illegal. I cannot put anything else in my body. And so a couple of days I sat with this, as painful as it was, and I thought, I need to go and do something. So I had a thought, and it was to walk the entire length of Great Britain, raising awareness for mental health and homelessness, because I was experiencing both. And so I packed my tent into a bag with a few bits of clothing that I had and decided to walk the entire length of Britain. To give you context and for this, it was 874 miles, which is 1,014 kilometers over a 3-month period. And what I was doing here was I would approach people that were helping the homeless every night, soup kitchens, and feeding the homeless. So I would give. It was part of my cathartic journey of healing and recovery. And then in the day, I would speak to organizations that were helping people struggling with their mental health, and made a note of everything and journaled everything. I had no plan, no idea where I was going. I just knew that I wanted to walk north. And at the end of the 3 months, that's when I started to go into therapy. So I had counseling, coaching, DBT, CBT, tapping, hypnotherapy, coaching, NLP, every type of therapy you can imagine, trauma therapy, everything over the period of 10 years to get me back to a place of normality. I tried to go back to work. I couldn't, because that was one of the factors that caused the breakdown in the first place. So I created my own business, and it's called Mind Canyon, Mental Health in Your Workplace. And now it is a multi-award winning mental health, suicide prevention, workplace wellbeing training organization. So I teach people all over the world how to have conversations with people about suicide to save them from ending their life. Mental health and workplace wellbeing. Now, all of this, again, started whilst I was walking Great Britain. But after that, I did many things. So with the information that I had, I wrote it up in a report and delivered it to the Prime Minister, hand-delivered it, and went to 10 Downing Street, met the Prime Minister. And then in my journey of recovery, I'd cycled half of Great Britain, all of Europe, ran to Buckingham Palace and back, obtained my pilot's license, was on television and radio, had hundreds of thousands of followers at the time, created a wonderful group, and met my partner, ex-partner at the time, and life was going well up until COVID. And just before that, I was just about to go and start delivering training face-to-face when COVID hit. And I thought, shit, this is going to end my business. And less than 2 weeks later, I was getting calls saying, Steve, could you deliver some online training? I hadn't anything online. So I had to quickly make this stuff up and pivot and transfer all from face-to-face to online. And over COVID, I had delivered over 200 courses in mental health and suicide prevention. And I was on the borderline of burnout. And so what I decided to do was book a holiday to Thailand. And this is the reason why I'm here, because just before this has happened, I'd split with my long-term partner. Dad had passed away. And I was experiencing burnout again. And I knew if I didn't stop, that I'd be back to where I was. And so I booked a month here. After a month of being here, I went back to the United Kingdom and said, why on earth have I come back? And so I booked a one-way ticket for 3 months later to come back. And at that point, I sold everything and put a few bits into a locker, but come back here with the mission, but also enough money to start a new life. And my strategy was I would come and work for a place here that I knew was taking on people in my industry, create my own business, or just go home. And so I'm still on plan B. And this is almost 2 years later, I've been on the island. And just this year, at the end of last year, rather, I received an email. And it said, Dear Steve, we would like to see you. And this is from the British Citizens Award and the Royals. And I thought, oh, gosh, what's this about? So reading through the email, and it said, we'd like to invite you back to the palace to award you with a medal and also a certificate to thank you for all the work you've done relentlessly over the years, and honour you with a medal for the work you've done in healthcare. And so I went back to England in January. I was awarded a British Citizens Award, which is one of the highest awards you could get for helping people. And so I got a medal and a few letters now after my name.
The full circle of like I have like 25 different questions to ask you based on all of that, like easily. But just from the beginning of them, we talked like 4 different subjects right now, you trying to commit suicide. Like, I know it from a close place. I will share the story, but what's you assemble of this menu of cocktail that you're about to just take into you, and what's going on in your head?
The pain was so great that all I wanted to do was end the pain. And so I thought, well, the quickest way to end the pain is do something quick, which was a fatal overdose. So for me, it was, I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to hurt myself. And I thought, what's the easiest way to go, which is going to cause me as less pain as possible, which was something that I was used to. But because I was used to that, my tolerance level was very high. So I needed more and more and more. And I have a funny feeling that's why it wasn't, they didn't go through with it fully, because my tolerance level was so high, but my intention was to die because the pain was so great. So all I wanted to do, eliminate the pain.
Just the pit that we can get in our minds when we give up is so incredibly deep. But when you choose to look at your story from the point of view of not the one who experiences the story, but the one who writes it, and you have the ability to see that, okay, you had to go and experience this side of the spectrum just to be able to first of all understand whoever it is that comes in front of you that you need to help, but also just to like experience both sides of this duality. You know, like you could not experience the range of positive emotions and amazing energy that you give others without experiencing what it's like feeling this deep depression, anxiety. Like it's we need another word for this kind, like suicidal thoughts. Like it's a term that is getting thrown around, like, oh yeah, but the feeling of having it, like I remember a time, like a couple of years back, I used to live here. I had a wooden tree in Bankai, and it was a very tough financial era for me, and I was stuck on this idea that this is what I'm gonna do and life is gonna help me and whatever. And slowly I came back, I like not back, but like came closer and closer to this pit. And I've been walking with depression and anxiety. Like I try to tell it to myself as less as possible because I make it happen. But since I was very young, you know, and I had a couple periods in my life that I just lost hope and lost the want to, like, I remember being there and telling myself that, like, at 27 years old, and I remember telling myself, like, okay, I'm at the worst bit of my life. And I remember it was a Monday, and I told myself, like, I ordered like a rope from Lazada and shit, like one of those. And I told myself Saturday. And like that period, all I've done was to eat like once a day, 2 p.m. I had a schedule. I remember it. 7 a.m. I used to go to the gym. 2 p.m. I'm eating food. That was my day. The entire 23 hours. Other than that, I'm in bed thinking about Saturday, you know, and the closer you get to wanting to do that, the farther you put yourself from people. You're distancing yourself. You don't want to listen to anything else than your thoughts that tells you nothing is worth it. You know, and you're going there and people are trying to ask you, like, what's going on? Everything's good. And of course, everything is good. But you know that every minute that ticks gets you closer to this. And I remember Saturday morning, and I'm over there and I'm assembling everything. You know, I watched some YouTube videos on how to do shit, and I'm sitting there. It was a 2-story apartment. And I remember standing from the top part of the stairs with the shit on my neck, and I'm closing my eyes. I'm a second from you know, and zzz, from my phone, and I tell myself, like, do I look? And it was a very old friend of mine that from out of nowhere, like, I raised my phone, I said hi, and he's like, I feel there's something wrong with you. Is everything okay? While I'm with like, and I start crying, and I'm like, I was so lost, but again, in the grand scale, like, obviously I didn't do it, but on the grand scheme of things, just understanding that how deep the hole goes is up to us. And the choice to rather to look at those holes as infinite and endless, and that's the end, or is it my next evolutionary step in getting deeper into myself? Because so many people said it, like, what is depression? Like, depressed. I need a rest from being this character that I'm developing and being resistant to the natural flow of life, and to hold those concepts that are no longer serving me. Like, oh, I am depressed. I am, I have tendencies of depression. I am this, I am that. I am getting attached to all those ideas that this is who I am. And like for a week repeating in my mind, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. 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 That, like, seek help. For the love of God, you know, like I know that at the grand scheme of things, that's is what making us the best version of ourselves. Just being honest with ourselves, just being clear with ourselves, and I will ask you a little thing, like, what do you think are some of the core things that people can look at their friends, their family, their loved ones and say, okay, something is wrong. How can you notice something like that before it happens? Like, what general change of tendencies people has? What thing we can look? How can we prevent it a little bit more?
And thank you for sharing your story. And I'm so glad that you didn't go through with it.
Yeah.
Your friend called and that you're still here.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. What can we spot? Now, suicide very rarely happens from a single event or factor. It's a very long build-up. So it could be that it might be biological, psychological, past history, current life events, anything that could add in a factor to that person taking their life. So like me, there was many different factors that happened to take me to that point. And it can be difficult to spot it. The signs are very subtle. If you know what you're looking for, they're not so subtle. But the good news is this, that with the suicide, between 72 to 84% of the time, there are signs. So which gives me hope that if we knew those signs and how to respond, suicide has to be one of the most preventable deaths. Yeah. So what we need to look out for is subtle behavior changes. That will be the easiest one. Or it might be a sudden miraculous recovery. So that person has been down, hasn't been seen for a while, and they suddenly make a switch. And they're very happy. And it could be at that point we say, hey, great, good to see you back up and out again. How are you feeling at the moment? What's going on for you? And just asking them a little bit more, how did you recover? And then that'll be the indication when we ask them, how do you recover? Because they might not be able to tell you that. And it'll be very sudden, very quick. It might be that they're giving possessions away. It might be that I know what I did. I sold all my goods on Facebook Marketplace. So I was giving everything away, pushing people away, especially family. It might be that they might be writing a suicide note, or especially on social media, that will be a big one. They're putting things on social media that seem to be out of character for them, dark things, saying there's no point in living or being very pessimistic. All of these are signs. Alcohol, drug use increases. Social anxieties, social isolation, all of these things, the smallest things. And here's the thing I say with this to people is if you're ever concerned about somebody, it's important we know how to approach them. So what I say to people is how we can approach them is, of course, we're concerned and we may have noticed the change. And I say to people, the best way to approach somebody is this. Hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you feeling at the moment? I've noticed you haven't been yourself, because it's very factual. We're not bringing anyone else into it. So I've noticed you haven't been yourself, like your friend did with you. I've noticed you haven't been yourself. How are you feeling at the moment? And wait and hold that conversation, because they might need you to say, how are you feeling at the moment? Now, I teach people to go even one step further, and I say to them, ask them about suicide directly and clearly. So I say what I've just said and say, some people, when they're experiencing this, they're also thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? For me, saying that word, I've taken all the power out. There's no sting in it. I'm confident to say it. For the person that isn't, can be a little bit, God, if I say this, I might say the wrong thing, put the idea in their head. We won't. That is a myth that will put the idea in their head. But if I ask you about suicide, say, hey, you thinking about suicide? What might that do for you? Open the doors up to have the conversation about it.
Exactly. It's like, it's also to open the door to the conversation. And also, like, I remember on myself, like, just the sheer, it rolled in my head for so long without me speaking it into existence at all. So I understand that the demon is never as bad as we think it is. So you just rolling around with the thought of, suicide. And the moment someone actually speaks it, vocal it in front of you, suddenly it's not that big like you treated it, because you're now communicating about it. And communication is already half of the solution. Just being able to understand that it's a problem that you're going through is already halfway to the solution.
I would agree with that. There's an age-old saying that we have in England, you may have heard of it, which is a problem shared is a problem halved.
Yes.
And you've said it just there. Once you articulate it, once you vocalize it, kind of takes that urgency out of that. Actually, somebody said it. And maybe bringing this to life is going to start to reduce that pain because we're able to talk about what pain that we're in. So it's, wonderful that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's okay. And progressing, it's at what point did you because I know you're also like a breathwork guide and ice bath. And again, all of the tools that someone needs in order to take care of themselves is being held by you and you wanna give it to the world. When did you understand that all of those things are correlated in showing someone how to take care of themselves? Was it tools that you just acquired to get the ability to help bigger and bigger?
And it was exactly that. It wasn't something until actually very recently, within the past couple of weeks, I thought I've got all these tools to put into a package to help people, starting with nervous system regulation, because we can't do anything with a person until their nervous system is regulated. Yeah. So I have a 3-step process. First of all, we regulate their nervous system, but I find out from the individual where they are. Are you taking drugs? Are you drinking? How are you feeling at the moment? Are you depressed, anxious, stressed? All of this, first of all, to see where they are. Then I help them regulate their nervous system. Then I'll take them into somatic work, which will bring up a lot of the emotions that they're storing within the body. And then that brings to the surface. And then from there, we can choose to go for psychological therapy or continue with holistic somatic therapy. And then finally, step 3 is helping them to create a bespoke well-being plan that they create, because I don't know what's good for their well-being. So this is where we go deeper and say, what do you do on a daily basis? What works well for you? Because it needs to be they create it, because it would be like me saying to you, all you need to do to stay well is walk the entire length of Great Britain. And you go, I don't think so. It doesn't work. So that wasn't until recently that with all the tools that I had acquired over these many years, I realized that I could put a package together to help people, the entire package from the beginning to the end. What I don't do, and I'm very clear with, is I am not a therapist in the sense of I help people with addiction, that I help people with mental illnesses. But what I do help people is I help them stay well. With the people that are vulnerable, with the people that are in a place of attempting their own life, I can help them by speaking to them, but I'm not a therapist in the sense that I will help them in the therapy. But what I can do, again, help nervous system regulation, somatic work. This isn't for vulnerable people, but also at the end, help them create a plan. If somebody needs medication, somebody needs a mental health professional, I send them to the professional. Even though I have lived experience and know these subjects inside out, I'm not trained in trauma therapy. I'm not trained in addiction therapy. So the big psychological stuff, I leave to those other people.
And if someone that helps people does not give you this disclaimer, that's a red flag.
Completely.
Because when you're trying, and we have a lot of this shit here. When you're trying to be, I can solve your problems, I can help you with this or that, and you're not qualified in anything, and you're not okay, so you know how to connect a couple of sentences and make people, emotional. That's good. But from here until actually knitting their nervous system back together, it's like earth and sky, and it's so amazing to see constantly people that just their entire life is about giving and about showing. And usually those same people went through something I swore after the attempt that if I'm going to get out of this, my life and every second of it will be dedicated on making everybody not happy, but balanced. I don't see life as being about happiness or trying to keep yourself up all day long or whatever. It's more about understanding that both sides of the coin will create the look of it, and just the way you show that, like, yeah, I can help you, but I'm not a god, I'm not a therapist, I cannot fix you. And not usually, like sometimes the thing that you call vulnerable people are looking for help, actively seeking for help, anything that can help them, like, have you seen some people that, like, at what point, I'm going to try to rephrase it, like, at what point you see, like, that people are ready to receive help without trying to think that the person in front of them is going to fix everything about them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's generally that person will ask for help.
Yeah.
Because again, another saying is that we can take a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. The person needs to be ready.
Exactly.
And it's at that point is, for me, my responsibility is to be open, transparent and honest what I can give and what I can't give. So, I'm very clear and say, hey, listen, if I think that there is a need for professional therapy, I will simply refer you to somebody else, because one is my reputation, two, it's their life.
Yeah.
And, I won't mess with people's lives, because if I could do one wrong thing, that will have an impact on them. So I'm very conscious of what I can and cannot help with. But I will always say, have you tried or maybe think about some professional type of therapy which will help you to go one layer deeper? So it's making that referral and knowing that it's beyond my boundaries, it's beyond my professionalism and my scope. Yeah. And I will say, I can't help you with this. This is not something
which is noble. And at what, let's talk breathwork, because I've been through a lot of different practices. Like, I accidentally discovered meditation when I was 12. So I've been practicing it, and it all comes back to the breath. Like, the moment you understand that, how deep, like, some people just never breathe to the full, and like, when you have another 40% to go into your breath, it means that you have 40% of the cycle of life cut, and like, how do you show people, and what's your way of explaining the idea that, again, it all comes down to the breath?
Absolutely. And it really does. So our body, I like to think of it like this. Our body is a huge storage cabinet of emotions, and it stores all your emotions in the body. Also with trauma. And what I say to people is, especially if you've gone through a difficult past, is a lot of those emotions that are stored in the body never got an end to the cycle. Yeah. Or it might have been a caregiver that hadn't given us the care that we needed in the emotion. So an example of this, a real lived example of this, is when I was told the news of my brother, my parents never hugged me. And they never said, how do you feel about that? So what happened when I got told that news? It's stored in the body somewhere. And so the emotional cycle never ended. So what happened when I started to breathe, really breathe? When I say about the breathing, we do deep, deep breathing in through and out through the mouth, okay, which alters our state of being, takes us into our subconscious mind, where a lot of our memories are stored. And this will bring it to the surface. Now, breathwork, what it'll do, will help end that cycle. So it will help us feel lighter. But not all breath work is therapy. Yeah. So whilst it will bring it to the surface, it may only bring it to the surface. But here's the good news, is then we can start the therapy. So what I say to people is, you might want to go to therapy now that you've brought it to the surface. You know what's there. Yeah. I can't help you with the next step. Now, the next step is you might need psychological therapy, but we need to combine the two, psychological with somatic, because you cannot think your way out of trauma. Yes. So what happens? We need to get it from the body, but then we go into the psychological part, which is we start talking about it. So both go hand in hand. Yeah. These work beautifully.
So you're like, if I understand it right, like you bring it forward and then the person needs to take it to someone that can, because bringing a feeling from the body to the head, now it's conscious. But the moment you understand what is going in your, not understand, but just being able to see it, again, like we say, being conscious of something is already halfway there. So again, it connects to the fact that like, your limits and you know what you need to do. And like, it's just amazing to see people that are clear. Thank you. Side note. But Okay, and how long have you been teaching breath work? Like, what was the point for you? Like, what was the session? Do you remember the experience that told you, oh shit, there's something here?
Yeah. So I'd been doing some trauma therapy with my therapist, and she taught me how to feel, to actually be in my body and not in my mind. And it was such a wonderful experience, and I wanted more of it. And she said, try breathwork, because breathwork will enable you to come out of your mind and into your body. And so I tried for the very first time an online session with a wonderful trainer here called Patricia. And I loved the feeling. 2 hours, led down, eyes closed, just breathing, just be with myself. And I always found that difficult until I had therapy, because my mind was just like buzzing and it just couldn't switch off. And I couldn't do mindfulness because my mind was so buzzy. But how I found calming the mind was through the breath. And not everybody can do mindfulness because they can't stop the chatter, especially those that have experienced trauma to the extent that I had. But breath work, we can. It's also wonderful for people with ADHD because it calms the chattered mind. And so I was actually feeling it within the body, and it felt absolutely amazing, like I was floating. And then came an opportunity on the island to attend a breathwork course. And so for a month, I invested in being trained in conscious connected breath, shamanic rebirthing, and ice bath. So all three different varieties. And then I thought, well, that's wonderful, because that really goes well with exactly what I'm doing, mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I qualified, I was delivering it to friends, decided to get a work permit and visa here in Thailand, stay here and approach all the largest wellness clinics and holistic therapy. It's not so much clinics, wellbeing centers here on the island. And say I deliver breath work, but my history is in mental health and wellbeing and suicide prevention. And everyone said, we'd love to have you here. So I'm now teaching at all the major wellness centers on the island and have been now for about a year and a half.
Yeah, because you deserve it, man, because the energy is there and just the sheer will to help, you know, like there's nothing like a good like closure story that you see the shit that someone needs to go through. And like at the end of the day, we gotta remember, even like the worst people out there, experience happens to us. You know, as I see it, you know, the biggest question in my mind is always like, what am I in all this thing? What is the conscious part of what it's like being me? What is the essence of me? What if I strip what I do and what I think and what I choose to connect to? What's left? You know, and then you understand that the only thing, not even like that, but the only thing that's really authentic to you is how you choose to respond to whatever comes on you. And when you see the stories and you see that 50% of them like ended up with suicide, with with, you know, like tragedies, but then you see the other side of the full circle, that people that chose to just be aware and just be conscious of who they are. And you gotta have this depth, and it's sad that we gotta go through all this shit, but like thinking about the fact, like even out there, if someone listened right now and like you were in a pit and you don't know how you will end up getting out of there. Like your job is not to know where you're going. Your job is to be here now, conscious enough in your mind to just tell yourself what's going on. What tip would you give someone in themselves? What's the thin line, the gray area between just having a slight, I'm sad today, and like, oh wow, I need to check this.
Yeah. First of all, intensity. How intense is that, and duration? So meaning, has it been something you've been sat with for a very long time? How intense is that feeling? How often is that coming up? So something that, especially with something like depression, for it to lead on to clinical depression or a diagnosis, generally often takes a period of intensity, very intense, for a period of longer than 2 weeks, and disrupts your everyday living. So what I would say is, if you feel that consistently for up to 2 weeks, it might be something then to start checking out and going, you know what, I think it's time to go and speak to somebody about this. What I would say with speaking to somebody as well, make it somebody that you can trust, and somebody that will hold it, not fix you, not offer an unwanted opinion or solution, because then they're just bypassing and they can't sit with that pain. It's to actually hear you and sit with you in that pain.
And for you, like looking at your own way and how your entire story just, unfolded with time, seeing that the first time, like your brother death and the pit here and losing this, but the thing that is repeating is you always manage to go above it. And as I see it, this is probably one of the most important skills to acquire in life. It's not about not getting into a complicated situation. It's about knowing when to avoid it and how to go past it. How do you see the relationship you have with yourself these days, based on how many times you showed yourself and made that, like, I am capable of anything because I fell and I rise up, and I fell and I rise up. And how does it make you feel in your own body knowing that your story unfolded like it did?
It's a good question. And I need to be real with this as well. I still get days where I feel down, but they're nowhere near as bad and as the dark times that I previously experienced, because I now know that it's not a bad life. It's just that particular day I'm just down, and that's okay, because I understand my emotions more now. So I say, okay, so what's my emotions telling me? Maybe there's an unmet need going on here today. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I'm angry. Maybe I'm restless. And it's okay, because my body is telling me something, and I listen to my body now. But the resilience I've built as a result of all of what I've been through, I do look back and think we are so much more resilient than what we give ourselves credit for. You look at COVID, how many of us come through COVID and what we had to deal with at the time. It's not talked about enough how much inner power that we've all got. And I try to stay grounded with it, though. And it's like, okay, I've come through a lot. I don't ever use it as an egotistical driver. But I do think sometimes, actually, you have been through a lot. But I tend not to think too much about the past and think more about, okay, where am I going? Because I knew one thing that was really harming me moving forwards, which was always living in the past. So I wasn't like always present. I'm still not always present. There's times where I do dwell in the past a bit, but like kind of bring myself out of it very quickly.
Like the more you get out of crazy situations and extreme ways of emotions and thoughts, you start developing this internal voice that is standing there between you and your thoughts and emotions. And you're like able to look at the energy that is being brought out of you in result of those thoughts and emotions. And this voice can suddenly tell you like, oh, I've already experienced that. I know this voice of doubt, of fear, of embarrassment, of not unworthiness, of imposter syndrome that I have with myself. So it's like this voice, always listen to it. When you say to yourself, this is not me. This is a pattern that I already, trying or am out of. But, the mind will always try to go back to where it's comfortable at. And it's not even about feeling good. It's about just feeling the same thing that you used to feel it. And thank you for being a person that allowed decompression and for being safe space for others. And like, I knew there's a reason I've been waiting for this one, because like the depth and the sheer will to help, it's just mesmerizing. And if there's anything else that you want to tell them out there.
Yeah, I say to a lot of people is a couple of things as a result of our conversation today. What action could you take as a result from listening today, especially to help other people, especially when they're struggling? What one action would you take away from today's conversation? But also to say that asking for help isn't about giving up. It's about not giving up.
Yeah.
And we must remember that it's not a weakness to ask for help, and asking the right people. There are people there that will listen, not to give you an unwanted opinion or solution, but that will happen. And we just need to find those people. And it's not always family. It's not always friends. It could be strangers, people that we don't know, because they're not close enough, because they don't know you. And so there's no judgment there. And sometimes those people that you don't know will give you the most support. So don't give up, keep looking, and know that there are people out there that want to help.
Yeah. Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
KohPhanCast, guys.
Join the journey, stay for a while.